Well, it's such a pleasure bringing in one of the best broadcasters in the land. He has been a legend for all those years, ever since he graduated from Syracuse. You know Ian Eagle from his work on CBS, primarily doing NFL, and of course, you know his college basketball work. Now, the number one guy. He's also on Turner, of course, because of TBS and TNT during March Madness. He's the voice of the Nets. But most importantly, after reading Brian Curtis's riveting profile of him in The Ringer, I did not realize Ian's entertainment connections. He is the son of a prominent comedian who used to be featured in the Catskills, and his mom was a wonderful singer as well. So I'm sure we'll talk some sports as well. But it's a pleasure to bring in the great Ian Eagle, winner of 8 Emmy Awards. Ian, great to see you, man.
Adnan, this is a real honor, and I love the idea of blending sports and entertainment. That's always been a big part of my approach to the job. So what you've been doing on this podcast is tailor-made. It is right in my sweet spot. So honored to be a part of it.
No, I appreciate it, man. I was going to say it's arguable who the best play-by-play guys are, but you're easily the funniest, and it makes it makes sense. That's indisputable because when I look back, and by the way, it was after I met you at the Emmys. You were so kind, you were so gracious. I got to meet you, got to meet your son Noah, met your wife briefly as well, and I told you Stephen Oling, by the way, remains your biggest fan. Gigantic fan of yours from ESPN. Of course, he's a big Nets fan. But I go back, I tell our buddy Bill Pito, our mutual friend, he's moonlighting on NHL Network, and I tell Billy, hey, I got to meet Ian Eagle finally. He's the best. He's like, guy's great. He goes, you ever read that Brian Curtis article? I said, no. He goes, you got to read this article. He goes, his background's insane. And I said, yeah. He goes, he used to, he would organize his own Little League practices. I go, what are you talking about? He goes, just read the article. So that specifically is the fact that your parents were on the road. You would make phone calls to get rides from friends. So let's go back to the beginning. Dad, a comedian, mom, a singer, on the road all the time. How did you make it work?
Yeah, the fact of the matter was I had no idea that this was abnormal in any way, not abnormal, but abnormal in any way. And I just rolled with it. I was very young when I realized that I had to do a lot on my own and just make it happen, or it was not going to happen. So it's a double-edged sword. The fact that my parents weren't around, that could absolutely be a source that you look back on and say, oh, I missed out on this, I missed out on that. Yeah. Or you flip it and you say, well, I grew up fast. I was really independent. I recognized that I had to advocate for myself at a very early age. And that was true across all levels of life, whether it be friends, whether it be schoolwork, whether it be literally getting yourself up in the morning and getting yourself ready to go to school and making sure you go to Little League practice and what have you. I see it as a positive. It ended up being a really interesting background, and my youth is full of joy. My wife made the point to me, someone recently sent me a bunch of photos and memorabilia. My father's widow. So my dad was married, 2 kids, got divorced, met my mom, married my mom, got divorced, met a woman, married her, got divorced, and then married her again. So if you could follow along that flow chart, she ended up sending me a box full of stuff from my youth. And the one recurring theme that my wife noticed in all of these photos, she said, man, you are a really happy kid. And I felt really loved, and I felt respected, and I felt heard. And I think that did translate a great deal as I made my way into adulthood of, okay, nothing seems insurmountable. Nothing seems too overwhelming. Just kind of do your thing and do it with the right intentions, and things will work out the way they're supposed to.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing to think about. You know, it's like there's stressful moments sometimes in broadcasting, but you overcame all that because you said you were so independent. Dad, I mean, being the son of a comedian, how funny was your dad?
My dad was really funny in a laugh out loud way, but then in a really clever manner. Wordplay, people that he came across in life, he made them feel incredibly comfortable. And I saw that at as early an age as you can think back on to have memories of that sort. Didn't matter. People within the industry, people outside the industry, everyday people walking around the neighborhood, the dry cleaning guy, it didn't matter. He just made it his business to make everybody in his world feel very comfortable around him. And that really resonated with me because He could diffuse any situation using humor more often than not. But the part that struck me as I got a little longer in the tooth, and now you remember things and you recognize that maybe I didn't have the exact handle on the situation. He was actually very professorial and had great wisdom and insight. And that probably is the more prominent quality that I remember, more than him being funny and having a joke and a punchline. The part also that sticks with me, and this is a very common thing for stand-up comedians. If you go to a comedy show with a fellow stand-up and you sit with them, you'll notice that most of them don't laugh at the stand-up because their wheels are turning and they're taking it all in. They're processing. They're saying, would I do it that way? That's funny. That's funny, but not laugh. My father was a really good laugher.
Yeah.
So that whole approach to me was the essence of him. It wasn't about him. It requires so much ego to do that job. And years later, when I was in the car with him, I had seen his act probably 1,000 times at that point in my life. And I asked him, I said, well, why don't you vary up your act? You know, you've got all this other material you can lean into. And he looked at me, he said, what do you mean? I said, vary it up, come up with some new stuff. He said, no, that's the act. That's my act. I said, oh, that works. Consistency, as you know, in anything performance-based, it's all about consistency. And he just leaned into the consistency of working his material that never failed. It was just made for the audience that he played to, and it always killed.
As you're describing it, I feel like I'm watching an episode of The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. I don't know if you watched the show,
Yeah,
but did
I
you
did.
find that at all
I did.
reminiscent of your upbringing?
Oh,
at
very
all?
much so. Very much so. And a lot of personal experiences. The first 6 years of my life were spent every weekend at the Catskill Mountains. Not, oh, every now and again. No. Every weekend was spent at the Catskill Mountains. And my dad and mom, my mom opened for my dad.
Yeah.
And they were a force of nature in my mind. I would see these two people that led everyday lives and then boom, go on stage, command a room, take over, entertain. These were people that were very well fed. Eating was a big part of the whole experience in the Catskill Mountains. So the audience, they were ready for something else other than eating. Entertain me. And my mom really was a gifted singer and funny in her own right.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad was a terrific musician, trumpet player, worked in big bands. Both of them dropped out of high school, mind you. Dad went to Erasmus Hall High School in Brooklyn, dropped out at 16 years old to travel with a big band, ended up playing with Buddy Rich and the like. My mom grew up in Chicago, was a child radio star in Chicago, and elected at the age of 15 to leave high school. My dad read the New York Times every day, and my mom did the New York Times crossword puzzle every Sunday and finished it. These were two people that did not graduate high school. So it was a different time. It was a different era. Their intellect was very high. And with that also came the hustle of trying to make a living and trying to find their way in the entertainment industry. My dad did not experience true success, financial success, until the age of 50, when he did the Xerox commercial playing Brother Dominic. It spurred many other commercials. He ended up becoming the hot thing in advertising because he had that face and got about 50 different campaigns over the course of his career in that time period, probably a 6-7 year time period. Anything he went up for, he got. But that was the first time he really experienced financial success. He had appeared on the Ed Sullivan Show with his comedy partner, Frankie Mann. Eagle and Man was the name of the act. The two of them started. Buddy Hackett convinced my dad to go on stage as a comedian. He would hang out with Buddy Hackett My dad was a trumpet player. Buddy would say, "You're funny. You should try this." And eventually he did. And it worked out. He teams up with a different guy, Frankie Mann. Initially, Frankie Mann is more of the cut up role, and my dad's the straight man. They go meet with a fairly powerful agent at the time who said, "I'm going to come see your act." Watch their act. Afterwards, they said, "What do you think?" They said, "You have good material, but you got to switch up the roles. He's the funny one. You're the straight man." Meanwhile, Frankie Mann is offended. They had been working on one act. And they did. They ended up switching up the roles. They traveled to Australia. They ended up on the Ed Sullivan Show. My dad told me the story. It was not a great experience. They did their act on a run through for Ed Sullivan. He did not like some of the vocabulary and the verbiage, made them change a couple of things. My dad at the time said, "What are you, crazy? That's the essence of the joke." And basically, his partner said, "Hey, if you don't change it, we're not going to be on." Well, the act before them went long. I think it might have been a dog act or spinning plates. And they got pressed for time. They had to take whatever their time allotment was and squeeze it into half. And my dad felt it completely tinkered with the timing. They did not do as well as they could have done. And thus it did not lead to the kind of gigs they thought they were going to get. They ended up breaking up. My dad went up on his own, and then years later ends up enjoying success financially from the commercial industry. So pretty wild, and just the whole butterfly effect of life, how it can have an impact not only on him, but then on my life. He ends up going and doing sitcoms on the West Coast, 3 of them that aired, and none of them got picked up. They all aired on national TV. None of them got picked up. One was with McLean Stevenson. Another was with Lorenzo Music, the voice
Oh,
of
yeah.
Carlton the Doorman,
Garfield.
and later Garfield.
Yeah.
And if they get picked up, Adnan, life is different. We're moving to LA. Syracuse probably never happens for me. And who knows what path you end up choosing. So you've got to keep everything in context and perspective when you talk about life and what leads to what and the sliding doors of it all.
That's wild about Ed Sullivan, because
Yeah.
I can't, like, I'm wondering now, like, do you think your dad regretted doing that? Because I totally get his partner's point. Like, if we don't do this, we don't get to be on the show. And Ed Sullivan can make you or break you. But I can see your dad being like, no, but this isn't the act we're supposed to do. Like
You nailed
that's
it.
a hell of a conundrum.
He regretted it. I know he regretted it because he probably played it over in his head 1,000 times. And my dad had tremendous instincts. He could read people, he could read situations, he could read the room. He knew they were doomed. He knew it. He knew it was not going to do well. And then the time constraints, I think, affected it as well. And then it just did not go the way that he thought. It led to their breakup. Frankie Mann eventually ended up in the movie. This is really ironic. Ended up in the movie Lenny.
Mm,
Dustin
Dustin Hoffman.
Hoffman, star of the film. Frankie Mann played Ed Sullivan.
Wow, that's unbelievable. That's a
Bizarre.
great 1974 film. Yeah, black and white. I'm gonna get checked up again. That's great. Mom was a singer. Who was
Yep.
more successful of the two? Because I always listen. I'm too insecure. I could never have a wife in the business. That's I can't. I can't stand the chance you're more successful than me. It would completely eradicate my sense of self-esteem. Who was more successful? I'm not saying who's better. Who's more successful, mom or dad?
Adnan, do you have a background in marriage counseling or psychology? Because you just nailed the issue within the marriage. As my dad's career started to pick up, 1976, commercial airs. He ends up getting Fleischmann's Margarine after that, where he played Mr. Cholesterol for 3 different spots. You can go on YouTube and check it out. You'll crack up.
Yeah.
They're really funny. And to see the evolution of his character, he was mean in one of the spots. Then he became a little nicer, and then he blended the two for the 3rd spot. As my dad's career picked up, my mom did feel jealousy, did feel as if her career was not going the way that she wanted. Ended up moving to LA. We lived in New York and Forest Hills. She moved to LA. They were still married officially, but they weren't. It was over. And then her life started on the West Coast. That was her life. I started as a bi-coastal kid. I would visit her twice a year. She'd come back occasionally to New York, but she completely abandoned the Catskill scene and the New York acting scene. She was going up for commercials. She was going up for soap operas. Yeah, she ended up getting One Life to Live, General Hospital, bit parts here and there, a bunch of plays, and one that I remember in particular, the mom from Risky Business. So
Mm-hmm.
Tom Cruise's mom, when the egg cracked and they had the scene with the mom and the dad. My mom was in a play with her, and I remember seeing it and thinking to myself, man, that other woman is really good. This was pre-Risky Business, of course, and I was maybe, I'd say 10 years old at the time. So talent stands out. Talent would always stand out in these situations. And she led a really interesting life. Didn't enjoy the kind of success that she envisioned until she got a chance to play Judy Garland in a show called Legends in Concert in Las Vegas. Changed her life, completely immersed herself in the role. I was fortunate enough to see it and be there and watch the show on a number of occasions. And she killed it. She was really, really gifted and perfect for it. So another situation where all these other experiences, you have no idea what's going to lead to what, that somehow led her to the role she was always looking for. Financially, it was successful for her. She was out on her own. It was important. She passed away at a very young age, lung cancer. She was 43 years old.
Oh.
But for her to enjoy that success, I think she needed it for herself. And in a strange way, she needed me to see it. She needed me to see that she could do it without my dad, without any connection to him, do it on her own and make something of herself. And she did.
That's very cool. They both got to achieve that. It makes me think about, like, in our business, people say to me, are these actually the best sportscasters? Like, if I said the best play-by-play guys are you and Nance and Buck and Michaels, or is there somebody out there who's really gifted? They just never got that chance, never got that break. And so my friend and I were arguing back and forth. He goes, well, I think eventually if somebody's really good, they will get seen. And I said, but maybe that person doesn't want to leave their gig. If someone is,
Yep.
The voice of the Dodgers, let's say, I mean, whatever, they just, you would
Yep.
know Joe Davis, obviously, but you know what I'm saying? Like, it's,
Sure.
just because we're on a national level, it doesn't necessarily make us the best. But at the same time, I'm with you that the cream does rise to the top. The best get recognized. How do you reconcile that?
Yeah, I grappled with that theory during college because I was at Syracuse University. Everybody that was there that was involved in the broadcasting program, college radio, college TV, had aspirations, and nobody knew exactly what the path would be. And I thought that I was good, that I had developed a skill that could translate to the next level, being a professional broadcaster. But I didn't know exactly how that was going to take place. I had confidence. I thought that if given a chance, I would prove that I could do this and do it well. But how does it happen? And that plays right to what you're discussing. Are there highly talented people that never get the opportunity to do it because they didn't play their cards the right way, or they took the wrong opportunity, or they pissed off someone within the business who then held them down? There's so many different permutations here. The one thing I always went back to is, and this goes back to our day, less now, but the tape doesn't lie. So if it is a tape that you were physically sending of your on-camera work, or a cassette tape of your radio work, that when someone stands out in the job, a decision maker knows it. There's some visceral feeling that hits you as a program director or associate director or athletic director or VP of production, whatever it might be. You see it or you hear it and you know it's really good and it's going to translate on camera or on microphone. But there are people that get lost in the shuffle or never quite get or don't have the personal skills to then handle all that. I'm sure, I know you've been around people in your various jobs that you think to yourself, man, really talented. And then you see them out in their natural habitat, whether it be a newsroom or at a game, and you're like, oh no, they're an asshole. This is going to come back and haunt them at some point, which
Yeah.
it does happen.
Well, it's funny because I'm with you on all of that because I'm like, I think intrinsically, like, do I do a good job? I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't have gotten
Yep.
this level to do a good job, but I don't think I'm A plus. Like, I think I'm just a solid, good worker. And as you said, I play well with others. I'm easy to get along with. I think all of that is very important. I think you have to have the skill set, as you said, you got to deliver on the air when the light's on,
Yes.
but you got to be a good guy as well. That will keep you in the business longer. And you're right. There's guys I've seen that I'm like, man, that guy, he really is better than people realize, but he pissed off the wrong person,
Yep.
said some stuff, whatever it was. But then sometimes I'll go the other way, which is I would think, oh my God, I don't belong at ESPN. Then I see some of these anchors, I'm like, this guy's actually not that good. I'm like, you know what? Like,
Right.
so right. Like George Clooney one time
Yeah.
said that. He goes, it's not that I thought I was that good. It's just that I thought, well, I could definitely do what that guy's doing. So sometimes it goes the other way too.
It's interesting you say that. I got the net job at a very young age. I was 25 years old. I was not qualified to do NBA at that point, but somebody took a chance on me. It happened to be Eric Spoelstra's dad. John Spoelstra was the president of the New Jersey Nets, and we had a great interview, and it led to this position. And I remember the night before the first game, and I thought to myself, I was brushing my teeth. I'd looked in the mirror. We're in Houston, Texas, and I'm about to go to bed. And the next day, I'm going to be an NBA broadcaster. And I had that seed of doubt that hit me in the moment. Like, dude, what are you doing here? Are you in over your skis? And then I pulled myself out of it and I said, well, wait a second. There are 30 NBA teams. So that means there are 30 guys on TV doing this, 30 guys on radio doing this. So 60 play-by-play announcers are doing this, not network, local. I said, are 59 people doing this better than I am and more talented than I am? And without even going through a list, I just thought to myself, no, there's no way. There's no way. And that's what calmed me down. I just thought to myself, you can do this. You're ready. You do have experience. You have to lean on that. And you're a quick learner, quick study. And it is a little bit of the fake it till you make it. And now I look back and I'm 30 years in to doing Nets basketball. That's the longest running job that I've had. That was 1994. We're in 2024. And there have been a lot of announcers that have come and gone. And I just thought to myself, dude, you got to have confidence. You got to have conviction. And you've got to exhibit that when you go on the air. Have command of what you're doing. And that's probably been what's carried me through a lot of unknown waters here and there. You know, I got a opportunity when I was at CBS. I got a phone call from someone saying, you do boxing, right? Like, that's a leading question.
Yeah.
I said, yeah, yeah, no, I do the hell out of boxing. Oh, great. We have 4 fights. We want you to do. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Had no background, none whatsoever. I was a fan of boxing and I threw myself into it and immersed myself and showed up for that first fight. And it was David Tua against Obed Sullivan in Las Vegas. And I knew very little about what I was about to do, but studied, prepared. The executive producer of CBS Sports at the time, Terry Ewert, happened to be there in Vegas at a convention. And after the fight, pulled me aside and he said, "You sure that was your first?" I said, "No, that was it, man." So I try to remind myself of these moments. Track and field, same deal. Golf, same deal. Tennis, same deal. You have to do all of this for the first time at some point. So nobody came out of the womb ready to do all of these sports. You study and you prepare, and then you let your instincts take over.
Yeah, quick learner and takes feedback, well, I think are great
Yes.
qualities to have. I'm with you on that because everyone kind of struggles at first, but if you can go, hey, I can quickly make adjustments, I can
Yes.
be verbally nimble, like absolutely, I can do what you're looking for. I remember calling volleyball once, similar to your point. Don't know anything about volleyball, but like again, study the work. You have a good analyst, you have a professional with you,
Yeah.
lean on them, lay out as much as possible, right? It's so I do
So
boxing as
funny.
well. Same thing. They go, have you ever called boxing into zone? I go, I've never called it. You'll be fine. I go, one thing, just kind of call the action jab here, right here, tell a couple stories. Holy shit, he got him. Like that's all it is. It's the same thing. And I'm like, okay, like
Well,
it's formulaic to a point.
yeah, two things hit me. One, I also called volleyball, so similar to you, no background. I had seen the C. Thomas Howell film, Side
Yeah.
Out,
Right.
with Courtney Thorne Smith and Peter Horton. So if I was ever in doubt, Adnan, I would say Side Out. That's that's all I knew. And then the boxing thing, the funniest
Yeah.
part about that, I show up now. I had never been to a boxing match. So I talked to the executive producer the day of the first fight. He said, I'm going to take you to lunch. So we go to the lunch at MGM Grand. I ordered chicken wings. He got a Caesar salad and we're eating our lunch. He said, well, what's your background in boxing? I'm like, all right, I'm doing this thing. The fight's in 8 hours. So it's happening. I said, well, Terry, I said, look, I've never done a fight. And he said, really? I said, yeah. And he's taking a bite of his Caesar salad. I said, look, truth be told, I've never been to a fight. And now I actually see like little balls of sweat forming right in the lip area.
Right.
And he
Truth be
said,
told,
really?
I'm not really sure what boxing is all about.
Yeah, yeah. And then I said, hey, if we're going to put all our cards on the table, I've never been in a fight. So I have no background whatsoever, which wasn't true. In fifth grade, somehow, I still to this day have no idea. I was told, like, oh, I heard you're fighting James Schneff after school. I'm like, am I? I did not get any memo on this. And I ended up having to fight this guy after school. It was wintertime. I had thick gloves. I closed my eyes. I caught him in the chin. He went down. I walked home. Yeah. So 1-0. So 100% knew very little going in. I show up now ringside and again, didn't have the background necessary. Everybody sitting there had a cup of water or their favorite drink, and then they put either a piece of paper or a small piece of cardboard over their cup. And I'm like, what is this weird boxing ritual? And literally 20 seconds into the fight, when David Tua got Obed Sullivan backed up against the ropes, and then spit, blood, and mucus ended up in my water and on my collar. I was like, oh, that's why they cover the drinks. That makes sense. It's crazy.
One of the things I always appreciate about your work, and again, this is great. Everyone should read I don't know why I'm giving Brian Curtis so much love, but keep reading the article. It's a great
He
read.
did a great job.
He tells an unbelievable story, and this is something that you and I both share in common. I'm sure a lot of broadcasters do this. I know Buck's joked about, guys texting me, hey, try to get this word in the broadcast, but making an esoteric reference that many may not get. And I've asked Costas about this, your buddy from Syracuse, and Bob told me, he's like, and he goes, listen, at times you got to entertain yourself. And Neil Everett told me this story years ago on SportsCenter. I work with Neil, who I love. And I said, hey, man, I when I became a fan of yours, I said, when I heard you say in a home run call, he'll take him across the street to Mitch and Murray. And I said, Glenn Ross is one of my favorite, it's my favorite play, it's my favorite movies. And he goes,
great.
Funny you mention that. He goes, I remember doing that. And the coordinating producer said to me, like, hey, what's that about? I was like, it's from a movie called Glengarry Glen Ross. She's like, who is it? It's like Pacino, Lemon, like Alan Alda. It's written by David Mamet. He goes, she has no idea what I'm talking about. She goes, I would lose it. He's like, why? And she goes, well, no one's going to get it. And he said, yeah, but I get it.
Yep.
To that end, in the article, they mentioned there's like a touchdown. I don't know, it's a Taylor Swift, whatever it was. I think it was a Taylor Swift. And you made a reference to one of her songs. And Charles Davis has no idea what you're talking about. But anybody caught it thinks it's brilliant. And I'm like, that's Ian Eagle at his best. You nailed the call. That's the important, of course. I'm not taking away from the action. I'm not making it about me. But I had a little bit of spice, a little bit of sauce that if you get it, you say that's brilliant.
Yeah, I appreciate that, truly. I realized doing Nets games all those years, I was doing them in relative anonymity in the New York market. The Nets weren't rating very high. Within the NBA, the Nets were not exactly a hot topic of conversation. And it was me and Bill Raftery doing the games. Bill is a fountain of sayings, non sequiturs, exclamation points. And he would do it in a manner that was really entertaining, even though it didn't seem to have a connection to what just happened in front of you. But in his brain, it did. So I learned a great deal just sitting next to him and being around him. He didn't have anything written down. It wasn't like he jotted down on the hotel pad. All right, here's 9 things I want to get into the broadcast. No, no, it's truly coming from his fertile mind. And after a while, I think just by osmosis, I realized, hey, this keeps the crew engaged. It keeps your partner into it. And yes, there is a segment of the audience that does get it. And it's very subtle. And there's a fine line. If you throw out 30 of them over the course of a broadcast, right. I'm not sure that's the way to do it. But you can do things wink, wink, as long as you're not hurting anybody, mocking anybody. Self-deprecation, obviously, is always accepted and often encouraged because people can relate, and that's all I've tried to do is be a bit relatable and allow the audience to feel like, hey, we're in it with you in some way. But Raph, a lot of it was based on just how he approached the job. He was having a blast, and you could tell. And that rubbed off on me. And we were not necessarily primetime viewing in the New York metropolitan area, but I knew that we were enjoying each other's company. And then the finite number of people that were watching, they were enjoying it as well.
It's amazing. Raph's one of those guys, like my buddy Tim Kirchin, like 1,000% approval rating. Like you can't get anyone to say a bad word, but Sean McDonough tells you Raph stories like you. It's unbelievable.
It's true.
30 years of calling Nets basketball. Favorite celebrity Nets fan? Whoopi Goldberg?
I don't know. She's an actual Nets fan. I'm not sure. I haven't seen her at a game in quite some time. There was a stretch where Ethan Hawke was going to a lot of games. I'm like, man, I think he's a Nets fan. He lives in Brooklyn. Then I saw him at a bunch of Knicks games and I realized, oh no, he likes basketball. That's cool. Jay-Z was a Net guy for a while. I thought, all right, Jay-Z and Beyonce were showing up. They were literally sitting 15 feet away from me. It got to the point where I was nodding to Jay-Z as I walked by to my broadcast location. And he was nodding back. I'm like, all right, now we're entering a very surreal part of Nets history. Beyond that, there are some repeats that have popped up time and time again. Seinfeld was at a game, and I ended up making a reference. It was a game winner by Joe Johnson, and we got a shot of Seinfeld right at the end of the game, and I said the shot was real and spectacular.
Yeah, that's right.
And it had a reaction of some sort. He was at another game, and I think I said something to the effect, I gave out a stat, and then we had a shot of him and I said, and yada, 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 the Nets won over Washington, the other, whatever we can do to make it light and keep it moving. Recently, I would say there have been more celebrities entering the Nets orbit than in previous years. Brooklyn has definitely helped on that front. There were not a lot of celebrities showing up at the Meadowlands in my experience.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, I've kept you long enough. Let's finish up with this. Christopher Guest, the great filmmaker, yes. Of course, Best in Show and Spinal Tap, all the rest of it. I met him years ago at ESPN, and he was a great guy, and he knew who I was, which made it even more wonderful. But what I remembered about him was that for a guy who's so funny, who's made so many comedies, he's a pretty serious guy. And when I asked him what he was into, he's mainly just watched documentaries. And to your point about comics, you're bang on. They never laugh. They just go, oh, that's funny. And I'm like, okay, well, if you thought it was funny, you would have laughed. You wouldn't have just said that's funny. But they distill it in that clinical way. Yeah. All of which is to say you're a very funny guy, but I'm curious what kind of movies you enjoy. I'm assuming you like some comedies, but you tell me what some of your favorites are.
Yeah, I would say that we probably came from a similar movie background in 70s, 80s. You had these seminal movies that just had an impact on you, and all of them would fit in that category for me, from Animal House, Blues Brothers, Stripes, on and on and on, and then the sports side of it certainly played a role. But anyone that says like people push it, I feel, with the sports theme where they try to shoehorn a movie into sports when it's not. Back to School is not a diving film. Like let's delineate between. Meatballs is not a running film. Right. Like just because there was a moment in the film doesn't mean that that's the main crux. Caddyshack, okay, yes, it's a golf film. The backdrop is golf. I'm with you on all of that. I found the biggest fascination point for me was the actors in films and then where their careers took them. I just was so fascinated by following someone that didn't necessarily have the greatest success, but maintained a career. So Tim Matheson's path was interesting to me. That I found interesting. Or Peter Riegert.
Mm-hmm.
That was interesting. James Widows. I'm doing all Animal House people, but
Yeah.
all of that I found that, well, no, he became a director. He was in Crossing Delancey. I later popped up in a number of CBS shows just as a guest star. So I think that's what spurred a lot of it for me. Pre IMDb, if I was at a cocktail party, forget it. I was just a wealth of knowledge. Now, when people can just go, bup, bup,
Yeah.
bup, bup, now, oh yeah, he was in this. He was like, no, 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 no. You had to know that. That was
Yeah.
important knowledge to know which actor came from which film and led to this and that. That was really what motivated me as I was learning entertainment. But look, you can name all of the major motion pictures of the last 50 years, and odds are I saw them not once, but multiple times. And I appreciate really good cinema. I appreciate now excellent television, which it's morphed into, to see Presumed Innocent and every Wednesday get excited about it and not binge it, watch it like you used to feel like you were excited about the next episode. I was in a film, certainly not saying this as a flex by any stretch, but it just spurred the thought. Jake Gyllenhaal, Southpaw. I played reporter number 2.
Oh, the
And
boxing movie. Yeah. Yeah.
yes, yes, yes. And in that film, my role actually ends up being fairly important to the storyline. I do not want to ruin it for anyone that's never seen the film, but the scene I'm in leads to a key part in the plot. So I fly to Pittsburgh. How did I get this role? The guy that I lived across the hall from, freshman year, Jason Blumenthal, ends up wanted to be a movie producer. His dad was in the industry, had produced Hill Street Blues. He does it. He ends up he's produced some really major motion pictures and calls me up and says, hey, I got this thing. Do you want to do it? I had to leave for the French Open like 3 days after he called. I was like, well, when is it? He's like, tomorrow. I'm like, oh. So boom, I fly to Pittsburgh. I do not get the script because they don't want the script out there. And we get finally on set that night. I get the script. I look at it. I think to myself, all right, I don't think this is great how it's written, but fine. Director is Antoine Fuqua.
Mm.
And we do 2 takes. And now Fuqua comes out and he calls me over. I'm like, oh shit, am I blowing this? And he said, hey, you're doing great. You're excellent. He says, are those the words you would use, though, in a press conference setting? I said, honestly, no, I would not. He goes, oh, no, okay. You just say what you would say. I'm like, oh, I'm now writing the script. I'm writing Southpaw. So we now shoot it, 6 more takes, and I'm now riffing with Jake Gyllenhaal. He's going way off script. I'm like, dude, I don't think they're going to use any of this, but fine, I'll go down that road with you. And they come back, they say, great, great, great. And I'm acting my ass off. I'm facial acting. And they come back, assistant director comes out and he says, all right, everybody, take 10. We're going to now switch the cameras. I'm like, switch the cameras? What? Have you not been shooting me this whole time? I've been acting my ass off. So they switch the cameras. We do 2 takes, and eventually, what's in the film is a compilation of all that. But it was a great experience. It was a lot of fun, and it was really interesting to see how the sausage was made.
It's amazing. We're gonna shoot you reverse now. My what? I have no idea what you're talking about.
No
Southpaw. I gotta check it out.
idea.
By the way, I gotta tell you my boxing story now. So I voice only in Big George Foreman, currently available on Netflix.
Yes,
Me and
yes.
Robert Flores voiced it last year, and I swear it's eerily similar to yours because I'm reading the lines, and sure enough, the director says it via Zoom. He goes, "Is that what you guys would normally say?" And Robert and I are like, "Yeah, you know." He's like, "Okay, do it your own way." And I swear to God, I watched the movie. First of all, you do it takes like an hour. You do like 35 lines, maybe
I
four
know.
make the cut. And the
Yes.
stupidest stuff I did not make the when I started doing like Cosell impressions, like that. No.
Yeah.
So when they go, yeah, do whatever you normally do, or do what you want to do for fun. I'm like, they're not going to use this. I'll just stick to the script. That's what they
Yep.
say.
And that's what you did.
All right, last thing, and I just on a poignant note here, it struck me. Obviously your son Noah's having such great success, and I told him and you at the Emmys how great he was in that Nickelodeon because it's a
Thank
common
you.
fallacy. People think, oh, you're a sportscaster, your kids must love sports. I'm like, no, of my four boys, two do, two don't, and the
Yep.
one who didn't, it's the first football game he's ever watched in his life because it was
Wow.
Nickelodeon. And he loves SpongeBob. So I told Noah, you've
Great.
got to do this again. He was locked in. I have no idea what the stats were. I still don't even know when the Super
Great.
Bowl, but I know that Patrick was fantastic and he's
Yes.
biting his nails and like it was great stuff. But it made me think about your dad didn't achieve success till 50. Mom
Yep.
passed away at 43. And now one of your boys, Noah, is calling the French Open. Like he just called my beloved Canadian team losing at the
Yeah.
Olympics. Like that's crazy how that's come full circle. Like you had parents who did not achieve success. Now you have a son who's achieving extraordinary success early in life. How do you reconcile that?
Yeah, mind-boggling, more than anything else. My wife and I looked at one another first during the French Open. The opening stand-up is him, Mary Carrillo, and John McEnroe, which ends up being the last broadcast that NBC does at the French Open after a 40-year affiliation. And it's Noah taking them off the air. And I'm thinking, like, how the hell did this happen? My wife and I looked at each other, and I've worked with Mary and I've worked with John. So I've had experience with, and they're both great. And he's sandwiched in between them. And we looked at each other like, what? How? Why? And it happened. And then the Olympics, same type of emotion. The back-to-back games against Serbia and against France, and the drama that took place. I said to him, dude, you could do this 50 years. You probably are not going to get two more impactful basketball games than what
Yeah.
you just did. And that does not mean that he's not going to do big events in his life. What it does mean is he just happened to do a couple really early in his career. Really proud of how he handled himself, how he's navigated his way through this wacky business, even at a young age. He knows how fortunate he is. He does not take it for granted. It has not given him a big head. And he's the same person that we sent off to Syracuse, where my wife turned to me as we were driving away. You get on 81 to then get to 380 to 80 to get back to where we live in New Jersey. As we pull up on the highway, we've now unloaded his stuff, set up his room, met his roommate, met his roommate's friends, did the goodbye hug, all of it. We just pull onto the highway, and my wife, who also went to Syracuse, turns to me and says, is he going to be any good at this broadcasting thing? And I turned to her and I said, I don't know. Because I really don't know. You don't know until they're actually doing it. So I think back to that moment a lot. It's been pretty incredible, and he's very much aware of how fortunate he's been, and he doesn't take any of it for granted.
Yeah, two thoughts on that. One, people in this business can be supportive, but also incredibly jealous. The amount of people that
Sure.
go, Noah Eagle, Nepo baby. And then did
Yeah.
you listen to him? Did you listen to that Serbia game? Did you listen to that France game? This guy's pretty
Right.
freaking good. So he's clearly
Yeah.
silenced any of those.
Thank you.
And to your point about father and son, this goes back to Ivan Reitman, actually. His son, Jason Reitman's a filmmaker, of course.
Sure.
Up in the Air does very well. He gets nominated for an Oscar. I'm talking to a friend of mine. He's like, oh, man, that's too bad for Ivan. I go, what do you mean? He goes, well, his kid has now surpassed him. His kid was nominated for an Academy Award. I said, any
Yeah.
father worth his salt always wants greater
course.
success for their kid. He goes, I go, no. You ask any father in the
Yep.
same industry, unless you're a complete sociopath, of course you would want greater
Yep.
success for your own
Ding,
son.
ding, ding. Though you just hit on something. There are there are people that do feel the way you're not supposed to feel, and for that, I would not be able to relate. That is
Yeah.
completely foreign to me. Of course, you want your kid to do better You want him to do better. And I think Noah takes it all in stride, fortunately, and has a really good head on his shoulders and understands that this is not easy.
Right.
And what he's doing is pretty remarkable in the grand scheme, but he doesn't see it as anything beyond the norm. He really is taking it one step at a time with each assignment.
All right, last one. I've kept you long enough, but this one's
Yeah.
self-indulgent for me. So, Harry, when I met Ein at the Emmys, I told him, listen, I've always been a fan, but it went to a next level after you told the John McEnroe, Nikolai Davide story on Richard Deitz's podcast. This is a good reminder, everybody out there. You can be the face of CBS Sports for decades, but somebody hears you on a Richard Deitz podcast. You know what? I'm locked in. So tell that story just for me.
Yeah, so quick version of it. I'm working with John McEnroe at the French Open. John is excellent on the air, as we know, notorious for not going to production meetings and also showing up about 5 minutes before airtime. So you out of sight, out of mind. You don't see him. You're not around him. It's not like the whole day you're talking about the match. You're talking about the two players. None of it. And yes, to the scouting report, he shows up 5 minutes before the match. And the match is Rafael Nadal against a French wild card, Nicolas Delvilde. That's his name. I ask everybody in Paris, basically, how do you say this? And everyone says, well, it's Nicolas Delvilde. I said, there's a question mark at the end. They're like, oh, Delvilde. I said, okay, I'm going to do it. Nicolas Delvilde. I practice in the mirror. I practice again. John comes to the booth. He's got a Knicks hat on sideways. His tie is undone. His jacket is hanging off his finger. And he comes in like the Tasmanian devil, like whoosh. And now we've got 5 minutes there. I go, hey, John. Yep. Yeah, good to go. All right, we got Nadal and we have Nicolas Delvilde. He says, what? I said, it's Nicolas Delvilde. I've checked with everybody. He says, no, it's Nick DeVilder. I go, well, no, actually, it's Nicolas Delvilde. And John looks me in the eye and says, it's Nick DeVilder. Went, okay. Nick DeVilder. And guess what it was the entire match? It was Nadal against DeVilder. So
I love the fact that you
lose
it said like it's a question mark.
Instead of
It's Nikolai Davide.
am I questioning Delvilde? Yeah. Tremendous.
Unbelievable. The great Iron Eagle. You can make sure you listen to him on CBS, of course. NFL is kicking up soon. You'll hear him on Nets games. You'll see him in college hoops. The best combo I could pay you. Again, you're the funniest play-by-play guy, and you're great at your job. But in this business, which is a small one, everyone raves about you. Back at ESPN, years before I met you, Mike Yam, Anish Shroff, Stephen Olling, Bill Pito, I could Scott Van Pelt. There's so many people that you hear Iron Eagle's name. It's the best. I do have to close with this, though. How much do you hate the movie Iron Eagle because you choose to pronounce your name I and you've been called the Eagle has landed for how many years?
Yeah. Adnan, this obviously hits me in a very tough spot because I fought like hell for people to say my name correctly. And I understood it was not normal. Beverly Hills 90210 helped. The emergence of Ian Ziering helped.
That's true.
So I had that working in my favor. But in 1986, Iron Eagle comes out with Jason Gedrick and Academy Award winner Louis Gossett. And that became the bane of my existence, not just for that year. Everyone's like, oh, hey, what's up, Iron Eagle? I'm like, oh, okay, again, it works fine. Iron. They make a sequel, Iron Eagle 2. So now it extends. No. They were not satisfied with just 2 Iron Eagles. They go straight to video with Iron Eagle 3. They're going to keep this franchise resuscitated. Whatever they have to do. Clear? Nope. We got more. I think there might be an Iron Eagle 4 if you look it up. I'm not sure Gossett was in that one. So this did affect me, and not just in that people in my everyday life now had a place to go to with Iron Eagle. Athletes, coaches, general managers, to this day, believe my name is Iron Eagle. I do not correct them. I just lean into it. And so it's oh, you had a son. He should have been called Iron Eagle too.
Right.
Get it?
Yeah. And to that point, again, back to Christopher Guest, I said to him, how do you react when people like quote like your lines? And he goes, "That's the worst." He said, "Just now, a guy was miking me up." And he goes, "Hey, don't worry. This one goes to 11."
I do use that, by the way. I do use that with audio guys. We're like, "Hey, you good? Your levels?" I go, "I could use 11 if possible." And they're like, "Whoop, not over there."
Iron Eagle, you're the man. I can't thank you enough. This was awesome.
Great to be with you. Thanks so much, Adnan.